Good morning. This is Susan of the North on Sunday, February 4th, 2024, and I'm doing something new today. I'm going to record each of the daily runes in and of themselves, but I'm also going to do a longer video with a synopsis of each rune for the day ahead this week. The first one I drew is Othela reversed, and this could mean anything from real estate problems, property problems, perhaps things within the home breaking, check your plumbing, just stay on top of all of the foundation of your abode, your property, things to make sure that nothing too destructive will happen. That could be one interpretation. Another interpretation, this being the rune of real property, and in the long ago, when tribes and families and clans held land in common, it also became the symbol for the ancestors, the DNA, what is going on in your bloodline or your blood kin, or people who are as close to you as blood kin. It doesn't have to necessarily be blood kin. It could be mentors. It could be the line of spiritual teachers, the whole lineage there. So something is reversed. Something needs to be looked at. And you can take the time to do that through the process of meditation, going within and discerning what your own issues may be. I keep a journal, and this helps me in a day-to-day process because I want to emphasize with this new modality of doing all the runes in one filming that the runes are symbols that help us in our becoming, in our spiritual growth, and in our soul connection to the world around us. So the first day of the week begins with issues perhaps in the home or issues perhaps in the family lineage. And this could relate to unfinished business of the ancestors. For that purpose, I keep an ancestor altar, and it helps me to connect with those of my heart who have gone on before me. So with that said, that's Othela. Now let's get to the rune. The second day of the week would be Monday, February 5th. This is Gar. This is the rune of Odin's spear. I like to show the runes and the symbols. If you take up an interest in the runes themselves, you can study how the symbols have combined in other ways to give different meanings to what is interpreted. The rune Gar is Odin's spear, and Odin used to throw the spear over the heads of the enemies of his people in order to gain the victory for our side. But that isn't the entire interpretation here. When I turn to a god like Odin, who is very knowledgeable, he's a god of consciousness. He seeks ever and ever more to learn the ways of the worlds and the ways of consciousness and world maintenance. And consciousness is world maintenance in the to simplify the long view. Other people who have written of this rune, I'm thinking of, oh, my mind sometimes just goes and dumps on the name. Raven Caldera has written on this rune that sometimes it takes you to the top of the tree of life at Valhalla, and I have certainly had that experience with it myself. So this rune, it's a rune of not knowing your outcomes per se, but it represents, in my terms, a beneficial outcome to questions that you have had unanswered that may have been playing out in real time, in real life. So you have here the two symbols the combined within this rune are the rune Gar and the rune Inguz. Inguz is the planting of an idea, of a seed, and Gebo or Gifu is the gift rune that keeps on giving. that is partnership and divine help and things that bring things toward fruition, toward culmination. So this is a good rune to receive today, perhaps after yesterday's rune Othila. Moving on to day 3, which would be February 6th, is the rune Os. I'm using the Anglo-Saxon Futhark meaning alphabet in the first 6 letters. These are letters in their own way. Someday I'll do a talk on that, of the river mouth. In the Anglo-Saxon Futhark, Os substituted for Ansuz or Ace. It's the river mouth. When a river opens into the ocean, it's like giving voice to something greater, like the winds. The river opens into the ocean, which is the source of all waters, the source of all life. When I was new in the rune work, the Norns sent me a vision of the first little fish climbing out of land, out of the water onto the land, where he could breathe the air, the lungfish. And it may not seem a very significant symbol, but in the feeling they gave me was this huge hunger and thrust for life, this desire to become more than one was. So the river pouring into the mouth of the ocean, it's that each of us, through our own creative forces and creative energies, can contribute to the larger collective of the world. Now, this rune is showing up today reversed. So the question I am left to ask you is, are you contributing of your own gifts, of your own skills, of your own talents, of your own mindset to the world around you at large? Are you helping to make the world a better place? If you feel blocked in this way, all you need to do to start, take small steps, baby steps. But I say this to a lot of people who are not always ready to hear it, because we are so conditioned that we're individuals. We're so conditioned that there is a separation between you and me and everybody else and how we think about things. But we are all part and parcel of a human collective consciousness. Carl Jung called it the unconsciousness, because most of us have not done the work of diving into our shadow side to find out what the stuff is that we're made of. But as I dig and I claw my way down back into the ocean of emotion from which that lungfish first crawled, I am finding more and more passion and creativity as what has been repressed in me releases. I feel my feelings and I let go. This is possible for all of us. So if you're a creative person, I want to encourage you today to look at what might be blocking you from the flow of life and to begin to turn that around. Take baby steps. If you find yourself in the middle of depression, recognize that that depression is not you. It's a feeling that's overwhelming you, but it is not your greater self. It is not the whole of who you are. You can begin to look at that depression with the witness, which is a part of ourselves that engages during meditation and just looks at what comes up impartially, with detachment, without judgment, without critically blaming yourself for whatever it is you're feeling. You are who you are. Our experiences have shaped us, but we don't have to let our thoughts decide that this is who we are. We're far more than that. The subconscious is like a big iceberg. You only see the tip of it in the ocean. But when you dive down and the reflected ice shows you aspects of yourself, some of which may not be beautiful, some of which are beautiful, and it's when we blame ourselves too much for things, we only see the shadow. You need to lighten up. You need to look at what is reflected without critical judgment and start putting back the pieces of your soul, of your spirit, of who you truly are. So this is the rune for today. Os, pouring into the river mouth. If you're not contributing the best of yourself to the human collective, why not? What's stopping you? Are you afraid of fun? Here is the rune for the 7th. This one I showed you before in the Elder Futhark. This rune was called Ace. It's the Acer. It's on Suze. The answer comes from its association with the gods. Now, in the Norse, and I'm never quite sure what term to give them for the simplest understanding. They are the gods. Some people say they are a pantheon, some say they are not. They are definitely family of gods related to one another, but they represent the collective wisdom, the collective ordered consciousness, if you will, of humanity. Um, when this rune is upside down in a reading in everyday life, you might tell someone, gee, go see a lawyer. There's a contract that's been worded differently or something else. Well, likewise, you have the medical intuitive, Carolyn Mace, whose work I love so much, will say the sacred contracts. We have created for ourselves sacred contracts in life. And some of those contracts have been outgrown, they're outmoded, or they're based upon wrong beliefs. In order for us to turn our thinking around from being enslaved to wrong beliefs and misguided thoughts, or even emotions we may have had as a child in reaction to something that comes up when we had no higher brain evolved yet to reason our way through it. This is a time to look at, what do you believe? What advice have you taken that has been detrimental? What advice now would you give yourself to stand fully on 2 feet, head proudly toward the heavens in relationship with your creator and all of life, to be happy, to have fun, to be in the flow of life itself? So that these runes both showed up upside down 2 days in a row. Both of them have their ties to the gods, and both of them represent higher ordered consciousness that we are blocking from ourselves. And here's another way of looking at it, if we freeze like a deer in the headlights by all of what is going on in the world outside of ourselves, we may never focus on having a happy, contented life. It doesn't matter what Joe Biden or Donald Trump are up to. They're both after their own issues with power. What really matters here and now is you and your own relationship to your life, and what are you doing with it? I want to encourage everyone to take the proactive steps, to be creative, to have fun with your life, because this is a gift to us. In fact, the very next rune for the 8th is Gabo. This is the gift that we saw earlier in Gar. You see this? The rune Ingu is just a little square, but this is the Gabo gift. Gabo is partnership in all of its forms. It's never a negative rune, except in the fact that if you give something, you are expected to receive and give something in return, as in the medieval times, a lord to his liege, or a liege to his lord. But in this modern time, it's partnership. It could be marriage. It could be your own relationship with the divine. It could be your own relationship between your subconscious and your higher self, as you seek to discern what it is that you need to be fully, cognizantly, and consciously human. And moving into the 9th, we have the rune Awaz, which is the earliest symbol of the partnership between horse and rider. There's a lot I can say about horse and rider, so I'm going to. The allegory of the horse and rider in mythology is between one's emotion and one's mind. The horse is emotion without a whole lot of direction except what moves him by appetite. This could be likened to the lower self of the hippocampus or Freud's id, the inner child who needs an adult to guide the process of living, of life. So the rider steers the horse, the reins guide the horse. Thought and emotion are married as the right and the left brain are married by the median between it. And it's just, I know I'm getting crazy, waxing philosophically joyful on a metaphor again. But I had horses for over 30 years in my life, and I just love them for their authenticity, their gentleness, sometimes not so gentle, but always in their rebellion of, I'd rather not get ridden today, or bring me the food now, or I'll step on your foot, or, it's always that innocent childlike quality that horses have and their emotion. And the rider is definitely the guiding force for the horse. But do you want the rider to be your mind? And I'm coming back to this one too. The mind, when you sit down in meditation, you see what some writers on Eastern philosophy have called monkey mind. Some people in the West that I know don't like that term so much, but there is an aspect of your mind that is always talking and never shuts up. It tells you how you should be. You ought to do this, you ought to do that. It's like, it's the inner critic, always judging, never happy. But there's a higher aspect to our mind that we can find behind the stillness of that noise through meditation. And that is the proper being to be guiding the horse. That is the proper rider. And you get in touch with that self through the process of meditation. You can do that through a daily rune draw, which is part of what I keep this effort going here for. And if you do, then the rune we have for, I believe, did I say the 9th? I'm always losing my dates when I'm trying to do these recordings. But anyway, the next day, Manaz. This is the rune for the self. This is the rune for humanity. And I like to think of myself after all these years of coming into my grayness, of becoming more deeply human, through every life experience that I've had has been bringing me to an understanding of someone else and their issues. It can make me more compassionate. It can make me a little more empathetic. Um, I don't have to identify with it, but experience gives me a level of patience with other people's idiosyncrasies that I did not have when I was young and in my own childhood years. Suffice, let's leave it at that. But this is also the rune. If you take it in half and you see how that makes like a P shape, you try to do it so the light's better. That shape is the rune Wunyo. That's the shape for joy. And we find joy when we're with friends or with kin, family, reflecting ourselves back to us, our good feelings back to us. So this is perhaps a really good rune to leave the note of the week on, because we started out with perhaps a problem at home, resolution to that, but then maybe other things come up that show us that we're not quite as involved with life or in the flow of life as we could be if we were allowing ourselves free creative expression of our own unique gifts in the world. And that means don't attach to all the stuff going on outside of you. You have to relate to it, you have to interact with it, but you don't have to give your energy to um, impassioned dislike of one thing or another. Just let them be. Who cares? They go on about their stuff. And that we come back to a partnership again with ourselves. The horse and the rider, the self to the self. When Odin was hanging on Yggdrasil in his search for the runes, he said that he sacrificed himself to himself. And if you are familiar with some of the writings in the Bhagavad Gita and other sources, we talk about the lower self with a small s, ELF, and the higher self with a capital S, ELF. So it's all about the relationship to ourselves indefinitely. We are born, there's a moment in time. We die, there's a moment in time. And everywhere in between that moment in time, we find ourselves. And we are joined today by Loki, the beautiful poodle, whom, if he would put his face in the mirror a little more closely, you would see definitely needs a haircut, which is my task after recording these today. Thank you for joining me today for a reading of the week ahead. This is Susan of the North. It's the week beginning with February 4th of 2024.